What was the locker room like in that era?
You know, it was strange because the talent pool was fine. I mean, you know, you had Lex Luger, Sting, Austin, you know, Scott Hall, Mark Merrow, Terry Taylor, Ricky Morton, Tommy Rich. I mean, you're talking a lot of talented guys. Now, the atmosphere in the locker room seemed, Dustin Rhodes was just starting out, you know, and Mark Merrow, I don't know if I mentioned him, but, you know, I had a good time, you know. The only times that, like as I said, I didn't, you know, feel like comfortable there was dealing with Grizzly Smith. But other than that, the whole time, you know, on the road in WCW, you know, with traveling with guys, you know, like Mick Foley and Abdullah the Butcher every day. You know, the Freebirds were there, Jimmy Garvin, and Michael Hayes. I mean, Bobby Eaton. I mean, you talk about great wrestlers. I mean, it was like a great atmosphere to be around. But it was just a low point in the company where they really weren't drawing a lot of people. I think Luger was the champion at the time, and I'm not really quite sure, but I think that was what was going on. But it wasn't so it wasn't a real high point as far as attendance goes for WCW at the time.
All right, you mentioned a few minutes ago about you in Global. That's where I first became aware of you. I remember as a child being shocked when I found out you weren't from England. You also mentioned some of the names you couldn't remember, and that was actually my next question. Some of the names that you worked with were future superstars such as Booker T, John Hawk, who later became JBL. What are some of your memories of working with those stars and your time there in Global?
Yeah. Sure, you know, now that you mentioned it, like when the first time through there, I was by myself, and I, you know, wrestled. My feud was with Adrian Street. If you remember, Exotic Adrian Street from back in the day with Miss Linda, you know, he's like, and it's funny because Adrian came up to me, you know, and he's like, "Hello, love. So where are you from?" I'm like, "Baltimore." He goes, "Oh my goodness, it's for sure. I thought you were from England. Oh dear, you know, 'cause you know." I'm like, you know, and I was just laughing. And he goes, Linda, come here. This chap is not even from England. Oh my goodness, he pulled it on us all, didn't he? You know, and I was like, yeah, 'cause I'm not, you know. And he and Linda were just amazed that I wasn't from England. Another one that was at the time was Steve Austin's wife. They called her, what was her name, Blossom or whatever? She was from England. Jeannie, I can't remember her name, but she was English too. And she says, so where you from? I'm like, Baltimore. She goes, oh really? You know, it's like, yeah, you know, but yeah, you know, wrestling with like Booker T and Stevie Ray was really cool. But you know, they weren't very good back then. You know, and you know, Booker T to me was always, you know, head and shoulders a better wrestler than Stevie. But Stevie, you know, it wasn't bad and was a great guy. You know what I mean? So together they obviously knew what they were doing. You know, the combination Harlem Heat, you know, was something, I don't know, like 20-time tag team champions. So obviously they knew what they were doing. Now, on the other hand, JBL or John Hawk, I had the pleasure of wrestling him and Bobby Duncombe Jr., who has since passed away. I get so tired of saying that. I talk about all my friends that are dead. You know, it's like the older I get, the more I realize that, you know, how like those people had me written off for so many years. But you know, John or JBL at the time, or John Hawk, who was JBL, he was just terrible. And he'll be the first to tell you, you know, if he wasn't, you know, 6'7", he probably would have been wrestling. But you know, I got along with him tremendously. Still to this day, I think John's a good dude. Never had a problem with him. He hated Ian, Bobby Duncombe Jr. They both hated Ian. They couldn't stand him. Rugged Rod Price, they couldn't stand Ian either. It was like, you know, everyone hated Ian. I don't know what it was, but I got along fabulously with all those guys. You know what I mean? And you know, like JBL would come over to the apartment and be like, "Hey, Axl, what are you doing, buddy? You want to go out to eat? Hey, Ian, you fat prick," you know, and wouldn't invite him. You know, so it was pretty funny. But yeah, that was like the dynamic down there, though, man. And I'll tell you what, in Texas, I had an opportunity to wrestle with a lot of good guys, man. I'm talking like, now it's starting to come back to me. Guys like, Kerry Von Erich, got to work with him one time before he died. Black Bart, who was great. Guys like Gary, guys who weren't really big national stars. I'm talking like Gorgeous Gary Young was really good. Hollywood John Tatum, working with Rod Price. These guys, Iceman King Parsons, who was tremendous. You know what I mean? So I got the opportunity down there to learn a lot of good stuff. And it was an awesome time for me in Dallas. We had a great time down there.
Right. Yeah, because I remember when you wrestled Bobby Duncombe and John Hawk. That was when your first title. You won the Global Tag Team titles. What were your memories about your first belt?
It was weird because we won the belts like right when Global was like actually finishing up. They had just learned that they lost their contract with ESPN, you know what I mean? So we were the last guys to ever hold the belts as far as that goes, because they lost the deal with ESPN, and then they tried to hold on for a little bit after that, doing some syndicated stuff. But Sportatorium at that point was dead. I was just happy to have had the opportunity to have wrestled in the world famous Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, and to have been able to do that, I was happy, to have gone through there and done that stuff. As I said, these guys nowadays really don't know what they're missing. No, there's never going to be another Sportatorium. There's never going to be the opportunity to wrestle every Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. I got to do all that stuff, and those are things that, you can't teach these young guys anymore because they'll never get it. But, those are great experiences for me.
All right. Now, we have a caller on the line here, so I'm going to go ahead and put them on. Hello, caller, you're on with Axl. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Axl, I was always wondering, why did they always put you down in ECW when you were actually, you could see some of the guys knew the business and some were like, always got pushed ahead, and you got pushed down? It felt like they would not put you as a champion. You were always like a brawler or a goon.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the thing that it's a great point, because Shane Douglas made that point one time about me. He goes, you can take, he's saying to Paul Heyman, he goes, you can take a guy like Axl Rotten, bury him under 10 tons of concrete, and the fans are still going to cheer for him because he's got talent. There was always some underlying tension between me and Paul. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think a lot of times he got just tired of everyone telling him how much he should be doing with me that he wasn't doing with me. And I think he resented it a little bit, because everyone from Raven to Douglas to Funk to Sabu to everyone was telling him, for Candido, they would all say, you got to do this with Axl, you got to do that with Axl, you got to do this with Axl. And he would just, I think he resented it more than anything, and there was a couple of personal issues, him and I got into it, but I don't really have any, ill feelings toward Paul at all. I think he's great, but I don't know what happened. And as far as like the brawling stuff, that came about simply because I was willing to do it. It had nothing to do with, in the very beginning when Ian and I did that stuff, it's because we were asked to do it. People have a tendency to forget that, I did all that stuff way before any of the rest of those guys. I mean, the first person to do, was me. The first person to do barbed wire bat in the ECW arena was me. First person to use thumbtacks in the ECW arena was me. It was like, all these guys, this guy's a hardcore icon, this guy's an innovator of violence, this guy's that. I'm the guy that did all that stuff. So, that only because I didn't care to do it. So that's one of the reasons I did all that stuff.
I remember when you brought glass to the ring in that door that you brought up I think it was the TV title match that you had.
Yeah. I can't remember, but
it was in the old Hammerstein ballroom The reason I remember
it
is because I remember watching you. You were going against RVD and Sabu.
Right.
And of all the, I mean, like you said, a lot of the fans gave the weapons to the guys. I remember coming in there with my best friend, and we gave you the door, and it was used as like a table.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times with doors. Yeah, because one time we got a door, and it was like, man, I forgot who it was. Man, you can't slam me through that; it's not going to break. But those doors, man, they would explode too. Like sometimes louder than the table because there was 2 thin plies of wood on them. They were pretty bad.
Yeah.
All right, Carl. Thank you for calling in.
Okay, thanks, man.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for the call.
All right. Thank you very much, caller, for calling in. My next question for you actually was, how did you get your start in ECW?
We were running these couple like independent UIW and other things down here in Baltimore, and actually Ian booked Paul Lee to come down and just manage on the show. And when he came down, it was when Eddie Gilbert was still the booker in ECW, but Paul said, "Hey man, why don't you guys come up? We're doing this thing in Philly. You'd be good for it. Why don't you guys come up?" And I couldn't work that show when my back was really bothering me. So Ian teamed up with Jason Knight, wrestled Public Enemy in his first match, and then I came in later and we teamed up. But that's how it happened. I knew Paul from WCW. He was in there when I was there. He was with the Dangerous Alliance or whatever it was back then. And he and I, had met, and so when he came to Baltimore, he was like, hey, come up here to Philly, and you guys would be perfect for this thing that we're doing. And that's how it came about, and this was 1993. When you want to talk about, ECW original, I'm the definition of an ECW original because I was in ECW and it was still called Eastern Championship Wrestling, before it was even Extreme Championship Wrestling. So, I remember back when, we had to ask the fans to all sit on one side of the building so it looked like we had people in the building. That's how bad it was. So, that's how we got started.
Yeah, that's old school stuff right there. That's nostalgic.
Yeah.
One of our listeners actually wanted to know, and he's a huge Pitbull Gary Wolf fan. He says, what are your memories of wrestling the Pitbulls at November to Remember 1994, where you and Ian were forced to split as a team?
We weren't forced because that was my idea. Like I told you that, Ian and I really weren't getting along, and I told Paul, I said, look, if I got a team with him anymore, I'm just gone. I quit. I'm leaving. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, what do you suggest we do?